I have an important message for a select few. That's not all of you. This is for a select few of you guys that are listening or watching this. It's for trade business owners that have been around for a while. They understand the frustrations of marketing and being in control or not being in control. Guys, it's 2021 and many of you are marketing yourselves like it's the year 2000. Off the back of a global pandemic, we've seen huge shifts in the market with people turning to service providers they know, like, and trust. There's never been a better time to establish the tools and frameworks in your business to take advantage of these things. These things that will serve you not only now, but serve the business ongoing. Over at Tradie Web Guys, we've recently launched the Elevation Program. It equips businesses with the tools and the programs required to successfully market themselves. It gives you tools to re-engage with your past and present clients whilst nurturing potential clients. It creates assets in your company's name with no proprietary licenses. You own these things 100%. It gives your business a huge head start on the search engines with advanced SEO, and it collates all of the programs and all the services you need into one neat little bundle, including things like web development, website management, email marketing, SEO, Google Ads, loads of different softwares, strategy, support, and a bunch of other things. After going through this program, you'll have all the tools you need to market your business ongoing. You'll have a huge head start in your marketing, and you'll also have a CRM so you can continue to build your database whilst engaging your current customers and re-engaging those customers that you've essentially forgotten about. Marketing tools that you need, and they'll all be in your control. You don't owe anyone anything. You'll be able to dial it up and down essentially as you see fit. So why is this an important time to talk about this? Guys, it's important to know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. Meaning, you want to be in control. You want to know enough to be dangerous. I'm not trying to give you more work here. Essentially, we'll set everything up for you, teach you the basics, and then it's all yours. It's complete transparency. You'll never grow a business past a certain point without marketing. Word of mouth will only ever get you so far. We've spoken about it on the podcast a load of times. At some stage, you need to invest in these things. This is the simplest and most affordable way to do it. For more information, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/elevation, fill in the form, and let's make 2021 the year that you took control. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
John, welcome to the Site Shed podcast.
Hey, good to be with you.
So a Canadian all the way from Arizona?
Sure, you're not supposed to tell anybody because we're all supposed to be locked down in our homes. And you're blowing my cover, man.
It's all right. By the time this comes out, you'll be safe.
Yeah, the world will be back to normal, hopefully. Knock on wood.
Everything's okay at your end?
Yeah. Good to be chatting with you.
Absolutely. So, John, you're an accomplished author, and I have actually, before your assistant reached out to me, I had read your book, The Automatic Customer, and I loved it. And in the last week, I have read the other two of your books, which I have been planning to do anyway, but it was...
And you're still talking to me like that's a good sign.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a good excuse to...
Cancel this interview. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
But I think that your assistant reached out and she said, John would like to talk on the topic of, basically building a business that can be... that is sellable, on how to structure businesses that can not be dependent on you, perhaps how to build recurring revenue streams into businesses. And these are all topics which are very popular within our community of trade business owners from all over the world. It's one of these things that, and every business coach kind of teaches that whole mindset around, building your business to sell, but very few of them have a solid framework to follow, So I was pretty thrilled to be able to get you on the show to talk about this. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, pleasure.
And I know we're going to split this up into a couple of different conversations. And in the first episode, we're going to talk a little bit about structuring that business in a way that it's not dependent on you. So that could encompass a number of different things. And then in the last episode, off the back of that, we're going to be able to talk about, now that you've got that business, how you can essentially prepare it for sale. I would definitely encourage all of you guys out there to go and read the books. Which one was the story? The Art of Selling a Business? Or
the story was Built to Sell.
Built to Sell. It's so, because I've read them back to back, it's all sort of mixing. I love the whole narrative in that book, and it's kind of unique to actually have like essentially a business book that is following a story narrative. I found that really refreshing and really easy to read.
Good.
I was surprised and shocked, perhaps not so much with Built to Sell, but with The Art of Selling a Business. So much of that language and so many of those like intricacies that come into play, which can really leave you quite exposed if you don't understand when you're in that status, of business, when you're looking to sell. And I know you have like so many case studies in that book, and speak to so many different types of businesses that didn't do it right, and in hindsight wish they had have. So I really encourage you guys out there, if you're in that space, go read the books. They're easy to read. They're not super long, but they're jam-packed full of awesome information. I loved every one of them. Do you want to give us a bit of a background as to you and your story and how you got to where you are, for those that aren't familiar?
Yeah, for sure. I've been involved in 4 different services companies that I've built and sold. Last one was a market research business where I thought I was sitting on a gold mine. We had these great clients, and we were about 5 or 6 million in revenue. We had profits like 20-30% profit margins, which is not totally unusual for a service-based businesses where it's like called people. And so I went to a guy named Perry Miele, Toronto-based M&A guy, and I said, like, I kind of rubbed my hands together and said, like, what do you think it's worth? And he says, well, it depends on the answer to a couple of questions. I'm like, shoot. And he's like, okay, you're in the research business, so who does the research? And I'm like, well, I'm involved in some of the research. We work with these big customers, so I got to do some of it. And he's okay, well, who does the selling? I'm like, well, like these clients are like Bank of America and Google. Like I do some of the selling, right? And he says, okay, so let me get this straight. You got a service company where you do the selling, you do the work. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And he's like, well, there's nothing I can sell here. Your company's worthless.
Wow.
And it was a real game changer for me. I mean, I left that meeting feeling like 3 inches
deflated,
tall, deflated, and feeling, like the last 10 years was for nothing.
Wow.
And so it was the kind of postscript to that story is that we were able to make some changes to the company. We went to a recurring revenue model. We hired some salespeople that did some of the selling. We kind of specialized in one thing, did some of the things I talked about in the book. And ultimately, it became a very successful company. It was sold to a New York Stock Exchange listed company called Gartner, and happily ever after kind of stuff. But that moment, I think, galvanized my just personal interest in what makes a small business valuable.
Right.
And so that's the nature of all 3 of the books. It has that's a common vein throughout. It's like, how do you build a company that is not dependent on you so that it would be worth something to somebody else?
Had you at that point written any books, or was it once you've sold that business, then you started writing the books? I
had written, it's funny, I never talk about it, but I had written a book years and years ago to promote that company. It was kind of like when they say you can write a book to like be your calling card for your company or whatever. So it goes back 20 years ago. I don't even think it's still in print anymore. But it was really to promote that research company. But no, I think I wrote Built to Sell soon after leaving the research company that I was referencing earlier. And I didn't write it with any sort of grand vision. When you write a book,
sure,
and it's like, well, it's good. It fits into my marketing funnel, and I'm going to none of that. It was just like, I got to get some of these ideas out, and if no one reads them, that's fine. I just need to get it out. And sure. That was the beginning of this little journey. I've
spoken to a few authors that say the same thing. They're like, I wrote this book for me. I wrote this book so I can refer back to things and go, oh yeah, and then all of a sudden it's a bestseller. Yeah. So
it's funny. Yeah, I think there's absolutely something to that. I think someone told me once. I think it was I was at a thing that Tim Ferriss was running for writers. Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Workweek guy, and he said the way to write well is to write to somebody.
Right.
Like, don't write to a persona or to a segment or a group of people. Like, write to a person,
to an individual,
and I've always remembered that. Anyway, it was a tip that he provided.
Yeah. No, it's great. And so, and these days, what are you doing with yourselves these days?
Well, these days I run a company called Value Builder, where we work with small business owners to improve the value of their business leading up to an exit. We have a software that we effectively license to business coaches. We've got a whole bunch of folks in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US. I know you've got a lot of listeners in those markets that offer the Value Builder system to their customers. So we license it to coaches primarily. Sure. And they use it to help their clients improve the value of their company.
So for all of you listeners and viewers out there, John's left behind some resources for you guys. And if you head to builttosell.com/shed, there's a whole bunch of resources on there. I'll link to that in the show notes. Don't try and scribble this down while you're driving. But it's builttosell.com/shed. Again, go and check out the books and the stuff he does. It's absolutely brilliant. So John, in today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about that whole structuring a business so that it is not dependent on you. And sure. in truth, this is a conversation, an objection, resistance that I get all the time when I speak to trade business owners. And it's that whole mindset around, well, this business is me, and without me, it's nothing. It's worth nothing. And I typically say to them, well, you're 100% right, but
are you okay with that?
Yeah, exactly. You're 100% right. So what are you going to do about it? So I think that there's a bit of a mentality in the marketplace around, and it's really old school, and it's something that we work really hard with our clients on addressing in the space of, I need to keep this information and everything we do really close to our chest, and otherwise our competitors are going to find out and they're going to do it. And then we, and it's ridiculous and it's insane, and it really reduces their marketing position. We live in the information age these days, and there's so much of this. There's so many ways you can showcase expertise to build value into your business and into your personal brand. And I just think there's so much value in being able to educate, essentially, and people are coming to you for information. It's almost your responsibility as a business owner to provide that information. It's not always about keeping these things close to your chest and trying to, drive home the sale. So I'm interested, when we're talking about building a business that is not dependent on you, there's obviously a lot of moving parts that are going to happen in a business and that need to happen in a business if they're not happening, which for the better part, they're probably not, in order for that to become a sellable asset. And I've worked in companies before who have been prolific acquirers of businesses and still are to this day. I was speaking to someone that works there last week, and they were saying, no, they're still buying up trade businesses left, right, and center, building it into their brand. Like, it happens. There are people out there that will buy your business, but you've got to have something that is purchasable, acquirable.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really keen to dive into this topic with you because it's super relevant to everyone out there. I encourage everyone to get their pen and paper out and start taking notes.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We see it a lot in service-based businesses in particular, where the owner is at the epicenter, and that is good in the early days, right? It's what gives us, Michael Gerber talked about, I think he referred to the entrepreneurial seizure. He's the guy behind the book, the email. And you kind of do something because you know how to do it, you know how to install windows, you know how to install swimming pools, and you're like, okay, great. I can make a business out of this. I don't need to work for the man. And so you do it. And so everything starts around you, and that's great. And it's probably very profitable for many people, but not transferable, not something someone else would want to buy. Because if you wear your buyer's hat, right, they're like, how does, if we're going to buy something, it's got to succeed after the owner leaves. And so if it's all the owner, then I think it's not going to be very valuable to an acquirer. So I think the trick is, instead of trying to boil the ocean and trying to figure out how to teach your employees to do everything in your company, I think the first step in this process is to actually narrow down the services and products that you provide dramatically. And I refer to it as your TVR. Stands for teachable, valuable, repeatable, which means that you've got to find a service that's teachable to employees, that's valuable to customers, and is repeatable, meaning customers need to buy it on a regular cadence. And again, for a lot of trades business people, I think that's a really big head scratcher. Like, I don't get it. Maybe he doesn't understand what I do for a living. Like, I build houses or I install roofs, like TVR. I think this is the essence of what you've got to do. You've got to get a whiteboard or a piece of paper and start just layering in or writing down all the services that you provide, from the most sophisticated, most complicated to the least, and just write them all down and then score them on these 3 attributes: teachable, valuable, repeatable. And what I think you might find is that some of your services are higher scoring. Like if you give them each a score on the TBR out of 10, some of them are actually more high scoring than others. And those are the ones that you can teach employees to offer. Like, and again, maybe it's so esoteric. Maybe I got to give you sort of an example. It's funny. I saw
I can give you an example of this.
Yeah, go shoot. I'd love to hear one. Yeah, go.
We're associated with a number of amazing business coaching programs from all over the world. And we were speaking with one of them who's based here in Australia, amazing program. And they were going through this exercise with their client, I should say, on just that. They were saying, okay, well, let's try and figure out where your most valuable product is, or let's break down all of the services and offerings that you do, and let's try and define a niche or a speciality or whatever it might be. And they were talking with a plumbing company. And this is really, really common, by the way. And so a lot of we're kind of preaching to the choir here. I say this all the time on the show. Like a lot of the guys that are out there watching this or listening to this, they're aware of this and they're in that space and they're trying to find their little market niche, so they can really dominate that from a marketing perspective. However, when somebody comes into a coaching program, apparently that's not always the case. And I've been there myself. You sort of take what you can get in the early stages because you don't really have the luxury of being able to turn work away, which we could probably tie back to in Built to Sell. We might loop back on that. But so this is a plumbing company, and they had a division that they've been around for a couple of years, maybe. So they're quite young. They had a division which serviced residential maintenance. So they would do things like, block drains, tap washers, hot water heaters, that kind of thing. And then they had a commercial, it was a residential sort of construction business. So they would do new homes, not like large scale, high rise, but they would do like cottage work and homes and that kind of stuff, right? And so 80% of their revenue was being generated through the homes. They were working for a handful of builders and they were always busy, but only a fraction of their profits were coming from that. And it was taking up the majority of their resources. It's that whole Pareto principle thing, the 80-20.
80-20, yeah.
And it was literally 80-20. They were looking at when they broke down the numbers, and they showcased this in a case study. This company's most of their revenue was coming from the construction side of the business. It was taking up the majority of their resources, and it was responsible for the minority of their turnover, their profits. And they put some perspective back into the residential maintenance side of the business, which was highly profitable, but they couldn't grow it because they didn't have the resource because it was all living over here in construction. And so the decision was made for them to chop the construction side of the business and put all that resource into their residential maintenance division, which is a stressful encounter, especially as you alluded to in the automatic customer. All of a sudden you look at your balance sheet and your profit and loss, and you've literally just chopped your business into fifths, and that profit's gone, that revenue's gone, but the profits are starting to increase as a percentage. So it was really interesting. And now they're full steam ahead with residential maintenance a couple of years in, and they're killing it. They've got the resources, they've got amazing profits, their team morale is high, and this is all as a result of getting rid of their highest revenue making vertical within their organization.
Yeah. And I think it happens all the time because we are programmed as entrepreneurs, as business owners, to value revenue.
Sure.
Right? Like, do they still do the BRW 100 in Australia?
Likely. I don't subscribe to that, but I'm sure they do.
BRW in Australia does the BRW 100, which is the 100 fastest growing companies in Australia. In the United States, it's called the Inc. 5000. Mm-hmm. And we celebrate revenue as if it's the panacea. If it's the, like we puff out our chests and say, we're at 3 million in revenue, or we've got 30 employees, and as if that's the goal. And I think
it's not about turnover, it's what's left over.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't heard that. I like that. Yeah, a very similar expression is revenue is vanity and value is sanity.
Right. Yeah.
That's another one. But look, I think that's a very common example. So teachable, valuable, repeatable. In the case of your plumbing example, did they figure out a recurring revenue model of some sort?
Well, ironically, yes, because, and this is, I'm sure this is something that we're going to dive into a lot more, but and you've got a whole book on it. So yeah, but it's very hard to achieve that with a construction-based business. There's no real way to sell a maintenance plan or a scheduled maintenance upkeep, whatever it is, into a construction-based business. But for residential, you can. You can do things like if you go out and attend to a hot water heater, you can schedule a 12-month inspection. Or if you do clear a block drain, you can schedule a 3-month recurring block drain, clearing service, so the client's, sewers don't overflow and they have to call you, essentially. To be fair, very few people do this, and even fewer people do it well. And it's not that hard.
Yeah, it isn't. Because I think a lot of trades business people look down on it and think
it's true.
For example, an HVAC company, like a heating and air conditioning company, you could install furnaces and have really big, complicated jobs of installing heating systems into stadiums, as an example, right? And that's really ego fulfilling, chest pumping, that's awesome. There's nothing sexy about going to Mrs. Jones's house and removing the air filter and putting a new filter in and leaving 20 minutes later. That's not fulfilling professionally for most owners of trades businesses. Yet that's exactly what acquirers want. They want your recurring revenue. I recently looked at security companies, but it's the same in virtually every industry, every trade you can imagine. But security companies have two forms of revenue, right? They've got installation revenue, which is when they come and install the security system in your home or your office. They put the pad in, they drill it into the wall, they wire up the sensors, et cetera, for all the windows, right? And then they have monitoring revenue, which is the juicy $29, $39, $49 a month we pay so that they call the fire brigade when there's a fire or whatever. Well, typical acquirer today will pay about 75 cents for every dollar of installation revenue, yet they'll pay close to $3 for every dollar of monitoring revenue. Said another way, to an acquirer, your recurring revenue in the case of security is worth 4 times that of your installation revenue. So, I think, this installing the HVAC system in the stadium is sexy work and it probably requires your expertise. It's not going to build any value into your company because that expertise resides with you. I think there's a lot of complexities and challenges to running a business. You got to learn how to market it and how to position it and all that. I think we sort of discount. That's where a lot of the value is created, not in the actual doing of the work.
And we deal with this a lot. We deal with those exact clients. We have clients that are electricians and they do the whole security installation. They do the monitoring. It's brilliant. But that's super easy, no brainer, recurring revenue model. We're working with air conditioning companies at the moment as well, HVAC essentially, where we're trying to build in recurring scheduled maintenance programs into their business. And you're right about the businesses sometimes looking down on that as a business model. The paradigm shift is, of course, if they want to maintain and prolong the life of their client's system, they need to be doing this. And so, although at a glance they may feel like this is not right, I shouldn't be doing this, the reality is if they don't do it, the service is going to bust down earlier and they're going to have to replace the whole unit at the cost of the client anyway. So there's a paradigm shift that has to happen in their thought process and the way they approach this from a mental point of view. Mindset. It's a mindset thing.
Yeah. And I think most trades businesses are break-fix businesses at their core, meaning the customer has a problem. The drain is clogged. The roof needs to be replaced. We need a deck to be built. We want to renovate our kitchen, whatever. Customer has a problem and the trades company comes in and fixes it. That's a tough business to make valuable, a break-fix business. Yet, if we just think of our job, instead of break-fix, is to prevent the break.
Right.
That's the secret to moving your headspace into recurring revenue. So I'll give you an example outside of trades, but I think it'll resonate or it'll work. IT services. Right. So, the IT guys you hire to come and build a network in your company, whatever, they always used to be break-fix companies, right? And you call them up when you had a virus and come fix my computer. It's not working. It's all gone blue, whatever. And now they've changed their business model and they've become managed service providers or MSPs. And basically what they now do is say, we're going to prevent the fact that you're going to have a problem. So we're going to preemptively install virus protection software. And then we're going to preemptively monitor that for intruders. And then when we see some sort of unusual behavior on your network, we're going to be preventing them from basically accessing your network.
Sure.
So they've changed their whole mindset to being preventative. I'll give you another example that's in the sort of renovation space. There's a company in the United States called Hassle-Free Homes, runs by a guy named John Warrilow. And Vagonis built this business. He didn't love the sort of lumpy break-fix nature of home renovation. Mm-hmm. Yet he was pretty handy. And so what he did is, instead of holding his shingle out as a tradesman or tradesperson, he said, we're going to manage your home for you. And we're going to do it on a preemptive basis. So for $400 a month, we're going to manage your home so that when you come home on a Friday night, you can crack a beer and not think about anything. And on Saturday morning, when you wake up, you're not going to get the honey-do list of all the things you got to do on the weekend. Right? It's all going to be done. We're going to change the light bulbs, the furnace filters, the swimming pool filters. We're going to make sure that all the things that break in your home are prevented and preemptively fixed.
Genius.
He charges $400 a month, and he just picks up dozens and dozens of homes so that he's got this recurring revenue model. Again, it's a really big head scratcher for a lot of trades businesses, but I think it's the essence, the secret to building a valuable company.
I mean, we, for years now, obviously, it's sort of similar to what you were saying about the IT. I mean, we're not an IT company, we're a digital agency, but we have like a care plan for websites, and we prevent anything going wrong with them. And, it works. Like and if it doesn't, if something does go wrong, we're there to fix it, like it's an amazing asset, because it basically makes sure that, nothing ever goes wrong. It's kind of like SaaS these days as well, like we're massive advocates of, Google Workspace, and probably at the demise of a lot of IT people out there who now can't get in there and manage your server, your office servers and this kind of stuff. But the reality is, you just don't, for the better part, most businesses that we deal with, they don't need an office server. They just need to have everything in the cloud and have Google manage it for them. Like, service as a software has just really been a revolutionary change, I think, to the whole market.
For sure. And it's probably one of, software as a service as a category is one of the things that we fight against a lot, because when I talk to a plumber or an HVAC guy or a roofer, and I say recurring revenue, they're like, all right, you're some slick ass guy from Wall Street or Silicon Valley who's going to tell me all his business theories. They don't, because software as a service and recurring revenue, those are terms and words that are used in the software space, right? And the Automatic Customer, the book you referenced in the intro, like I wrote that to try to make the case that you don't have to be a software company to apply these lessons. You can be a security company, a roofing company, a plumbing company, to create some recurring revenue. And I think that one of the things, and I'd be curious to know, Matt, if you've seen this in your firm, one of the sort of hidden reasons to create recurring revenue is something I refer to as the Trojan horse effect, which I don't know if you remember from like grade 9. I don't know if they taught it in Australia, but like the Spartans and the Trojans had that war, and they dragged the Trojan horse in the center of it. Do you remember that lesson?
Oh yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
butchering it.
No, I'm very familiar with it.
And they were, the guys were.
I'm a history nut. I love all these.
Okay. Well, there you go. So the Trojan horse was like, they dragged it into the center of town in the cover of darkness.
As a gift, I think, under the demise of a gift.
Right? And then in the middle of the night, everybody kind of
come out of it, and
got out of the horse and took over the town, and it was a big thing. Anyways, we use this for this reference, the Trojan horse effect, because it communicates the idea that once you get a customer buying your $30 a month maintenance plan for your HVAC company, or your $50 a month, carpet cleaning maintenance plan, or whatever it is, something happens in their brain, and it makes them much more likely to buy your other products and services from you.
Sure.
And so because they're paying you $30 a month for the furnace maintenance plan, when you decide to add an addition and you want a new air conditioning unit,
you're front of mind.
They're the first company you call. Right. Mm-hmm. Because you've got a recurring revenue model, they're not, they've got permission to email you, they've got your credit card on file. Like there's all these sort of barriers that are typical of a purchase have all been eliminated because you have this very small monthly charge going through on their credit card. And so even if you don't want to become 100% recurring revenue and you want to still do these big, sexy jobs, good on you. But having 10% of your revenue coming from subscribers, it just makes it so much more profitable because you don't have to market to them. They're already customers of yours.
It ties in closely with another paradigm shift in business, which I think a lot of guys struggle with. And that's like that whole being front of mind conversation, where they're so used to and conditioned to showing up, doing the job, leaving, waiting for the client to call them back next time there's a problem. We see this every single day, and we have like email marketing programs within the business, which basically help our clients re-engage with their database, because they've just got this churn and burn mentality. The reality is they're not proactive when it comes to getting back in the door with their customers, and they're not thinking beyond what we've just done. They go and do the job, they leave, and they don't consider the fact that, Bob and Sally were completely unaware that they also do all these other things. So when they need those things, they go and Google them instead of just calling the trusted technician that they've already engaged and already paid, So again, it sort of ties back to this whole communication education piece, where you shouldn't expect people to know what you do. There's some of the guys that we work with, they'll leave a folder which basically says, oh, by the way, this, after they leave the job, these are the other things that we do. Here's a discount on your next callback. Here's a discount here's a coupon for referrals, and all these kind of things, right? Just as a way to basically build that engagement and re-engagement and educate people as to, what it is, the other things that you do. It's really common. We've got clients that work not just in the, in one space. They might do electrical, plumbing, and HVAC all together in the company, and they might go out there for a plumbing job, and so the client knows that they can do plumbing, but they may be completely unaware that they also have an electrical division, or they also have a HVAC division, So if you're not communicating these things with people, then how the heck are they supposed to know?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So no, I completely understand what you're saying there. I'm wondering as well, like with the whole, and it's true what you're saying about that recurring model. It's not necessarily going to be a big money maker for you. It's not there to turn your business into a zillionaire, but it's there to keep you front of mind when things do arise. And if they are part of a membership program, for example, of course they're going to call you to come and service it, because if they do, they get a certain rate, and or maybe they get that call out for nothing, or whatever it might be. But there's advantages. They're part of that membership for a reason, So
yeah, and one of the hidden reasons I think moving to some sort of recurring subscription maintenance plan is that it helps you plan your business and the resources you're going to need.
Sure.
I mean, just knowing how many trucks you're going to need on the road in 6 months, because you know how many subscribers you have. So you know how many customers you're going to visit. And for every 10 customer subscribers you have, that one of them is going to have a custom job for you. And so you could really start your resources. I remember from, when I ran service companies, the beginning of the month was like the worst time of the month, because like you chase the revenue and the jobs all month, and you put together a decent month, and you look at your QuickBooks or whatever, and there'd be profit at the bottom, and you kind of like go, yeah, that's awesome. And then you'd have to do it all over again, right? First couple of days of the month, you start the month and you've got nothing on the books, and you got to kind of recreate the magic every single month. And it just becomes exhausting. And that's one of the things that I really like about recurring revenue is you start the month with some business, and you can start to plan, how many technicians you need, how many trucks you need. And that just makes it so much more predictable and less stressful, I think, to run a trades business.
I imagine we're going to talk about this in the next episode when we're talking about preparing a trade business for sale. But if I forget, remind me, because I know I did speak to on a podcast a little while back. I had a guest on the show who was talking about there are also you've got to be careful when it comes to having like membership programs within your business, because you don't want to have a situation where you've got a whole bunch of people that have subscribed to a membership service that at some point needs to be delivered on. So, like 2-year or 3-year programs could potentially look like a liability to an acquirer, because all of a sudden you've sold these programs, so your revenue's up, but then you've got to deliver on these jobs, which is going to require a lot of resource down the track. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I mean, it gets into like, how do you manage the finances of the recurring model? So one of the things that's important, I think, and if you're working with an accountant, they'll do this, is they'll basically spread the subscription over the life of the subscription. So if you get $1,000, let's say, to a year for your service, that your accountant's going to basically recognize $6 a month. It's not 96, but it's 80 something dollars per month to make up for the $1,000 over a year. So that when you present your books to a potential acquirer, it's not so lumpy. It shows that there's a steady stream of revenue.
I think this is more lending to the side of the conversation where, okay, great, you've sold a membership program, which entails 2 annual services, 3 free call outs or whatever it is over the course of 2 years.
Those are liabilities if they're not fulfilled.
Right. And so basically at the crux of that conversation, it was said, well, if you're going to sell a membership or if you're going to sell a service like that, you don't ever sell it beyond 1 year. You always make sure it's a year, then like it's an annual thing, because the last thing you want is to have a situation where, you're 2 years in, the clients haven't called on it, and all of a sudden you've got to deliver on all these things, which basically is a huge liability.
Yeah, an acquirer will look at that and say that's a huge liability. You're absolutely right. So I think having services ideally that they're committing for you to do, as opposed to you get 3 free calls, say every 3 months, we will be at your door to change out your furnace filters, as an example. That's different. It's proactive rather than reactive. Now, some models don't lend themselves to that. So you've got to have some, you can call us twice a year or whatever. But if you can make it sort of preemptive, then that avoids the whole liability piece down the road.
So I'll give you an example of a client we're working with at the moment who's up in Brisbane, which typically is quite a warm climate for the better part of the year. And so he runs an air conditioning business. And the issue that he has is coming into summer, when they're flat out booked out with installations. Of course, that's when everybody wants to get their air conditioning serviced, or if there's an issue with it, they want to get it fixed, right? So we're helping him build out a program where in the downtime, in the colder winter months, he's basically servicing all these air conditioning units so that come summer, he can focus on installs and people aren't complaining, hey, my air conditioning's broken, come fix it, kind of thing. So
it's great. I'll give you another example. There's a company in the United States called Mosquito Squad. So if you're in the southeastern United States, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, it's brutal for mosquitoes in the spring. Right. And so the thing with mosquitoes, and I didn't really know this until I started learning a little bit about this company, it's almost impossible to eradicate mosquitoes once they hatch their eggs for the season. Right. Like once they hatch, it's done. And Mosquito Squad, as the name implies, is basically mosquito eradication services. They get rid of your mosquitoes for you in the outdoor living spaces, right? In your deck, your patio, whatever. And so basically the typical thing that would happen is someone would, April, May, first few nice warm nights of the summer, everybody would have mosquitoes and they'd call this company and say, come fix our mosquitoes, right? And then they'd have to have the difficult conversation. It's like, it's too late, right? Call us in February and we'd be happy to help. So they built a subscription model, right? 12 months of the year, we're going to make sure that you never have mosquitoes anywhere you're near your home.
Wow.
And they know that they've got to go spray in January and February and March, way before the customer even thinks about mosquitoes, right? So it's a preemptive, as goes back to this conversation we were having before, it's preemptive. It's not break fix. It's basically preventing the problem from starting in the first place. And that's the essence of a lot of these models is ensuring that the customer doesn't have the problem in the first place.
The hard thing,
a great model.
In my experience, the obstacle that arises with that is like when it's a good service and it's the way to prevent these issues from happening, it's sometimes hard to communicate to a client who isn't having a problem. So for example, with our website care plan, none of the websites ever have any issues. They're always working perfectly. So when they're getting a monthly bill or whatever, and they're going, well, why am I paying this? Nothing's wrong with it. And so the issue then becomes communicating how and why there's nothing wrong with it, because people don't really understand. They like to say, well, if somebody's busted, we get it fixed and that's fine. But then, the preventative side of it is kind of a little bit hard for them to sometimes, well, it's certainly hard. It's one of the hardest things for us to communicate with our messaging and our marketing.
Have you ever looked at the Nest thermostat?
No.
Do you know what a Nest thermostat is? It's like a digital thermostat. Basically, you can It's owned by Google. Google acquired them a while ago.
No, never heard of it.
But they are a Wi-Fi enabled thermostat. So if you basically, one of the things is that it's a learning thermostat. So you can turn it up and down, and it kind of learns how you like the temperature certain times of the day. So in the morning, it'll like kind of pre-warm your house if it's cold or whatever.
Okay.
Anyways, the reason I bring it up is that they've found, I think, a really nice solution to the problem you raised, which is kind of communicating the value they add on an ongoing basis. And so what they do is they send you a monthly report on your energy consumption and how much energy you've used relative to last year and how much energy you saved by using a Nest thermostat. And it's just like a friendly email that you get once a month. And it's like once a month, you're reminded of like how cool this product is. And
yeah,
so
it's funny you say
I wonder
that.
if
We do that.
What's that?
We've started doing that, and it's
that's great.
To be honest, most customers don't respond or probably don't even really care, but it sort of justifies to them what's being done. These many plugins have been updated. This is the WordPress versions have been updated. These are the issues we found. This is your uptime. This is your downtime. And it just
and they're like, oh, geez, I didn't know it was that complicated. I don't want anywhere near. Like, here's my $50 a month. Go away. I don't want
exactly.
To touch that.
Yeah, exactly right. So,
yeah. No, I think that's brilliant. And if you can scale that so that you're not doing it sort of, you've got obviously some technology that enables you to do that on for lots of customers at the same time. I think that makes a ton of sense.
So I suppose in terms of, like dialing it back a little bit to, I suppose, to structuring a business for trade businesses that isn't dependent on you. Like we've spoken a bit about the recurring revenue side of things, which we haven't really brought up how you can make that less dependent on any one business owner. What are some of the things that the guys out there need to consider when they're trying to build a business that doesn't depend on them? Yeah.
So once you've figured out your TVR, your teachable, valuable, repeatable, like that one service that meets those three criteria, I think what you want to do is brand it, name it, productize it. And when I say productize it, that's probably a term you may or may not have heard. What it refers to is making a service appear like a thing. Like a product, like that you would buy off the shelf at a store, and that makes it tangible. And when you think about when you buy a service, typically you're buying the service provider's experience.
Right.
So you're like, okay, tell me about your service, and then you might go learn about their other jobs. You might try to find out what other work they've done. You might go into a LinkedIn profile and figure out their experience, et cetera. You're evaluating a human being, and it makes you loyal to that human being, right? Whereas when you buy a product, you're evaluating the effectiveness of the thing, right? So you read the instructions, you read the trademark, you read the guarantee, you try to understand the product, less the person offering the product. So, if you've got the 5-step happy home solution or the 3-step comfortable living HVAC maintenance plan or whatever, right. I think you want to, again, brand it so that it's yours.
Yeah.
That also, not only does it make it more tangible, easy, it makes it easier for other people to sell. Because if you're the service provider and you haven't productized your solution yet, nobody else is going to be able to sell it other than you. It's all going to come down to you being able to sell your solution. Whereas if you made it a thing, that enables salespeople to learn how to sell it. Right? There's a brochure, there's a video, there's a set of FAQs, et cetera. And that enables salespeople to sell it. And I think that's probably the next step to making your business less dependent on you is to productize that service.
The other thing that does is have you heard the term apples for apples?
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of our builder clients, for example, have had issues in the past because they're going through this whole exercise and to be fair, it's the market has been miseducated in this space. I want to get a quote on a home build or a renovation, right? So this guy over here is doing free quotes. This guy over here is charging $2,000 for a quote because they're both called quotes. They go, well, why would I pay $2,000 for something that this guy's doing for nothing? It's the same thing. So we've been able to help a lot of our builder clients. But the reality is for them to provide a proper quote on a home renovation, it takes a lot of work. It can take some of these guys 2 weeks to put this together, and at the end of it, it's so much more than a quote. It's essentially like a detailed project analysis. And so a lot of our builder clients now, we've been able to help them turn this into a product where we say, listen, we don't do quotes. The reason we don't do quotes is because we want to make sure that we're equipping you guys with all of the information that you guys need in order to run this project. So what we do is a project scope, and the project scope costs $2,000. And if you decide at the end of it you want to go ahead with our services, we deduct that cost from the cost of your renovation. However, if you don't wish to go ahead with us, that's fine as well. You can take this scope, give it to whatever builder you like, and then they could use that to help with their project costing. And it changes the dynamic then, because it's no longer a quote for a quote. It's a quote, free quote versus a detailed project scope. And so that's been a really, really good tool for a lot of the guys out there that are, and it's enabled them to cover their costs for be able to, the time they need to invest in order to do something like that correctly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
So it's like a lot of things. It's a slight shift in the way you communicate something that makes a big difference at the end of the day. We see it a lot with things like, content. Plumbers will say, "Oh, how can I create?" Like we bust their balls every month for content projects they've done to stick on their website. Yeah. Who would want to hear about this? It's just a block drain. We did was a block drain. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, tell me a little bit about where was it? I was just down in North Sydney. Whereabouts? Oh, just down near the water. Oh, on Sydney Harbour. Yeah. Oh, okay. And pretty old building, was it? Yeah, it was pretty old. Heritage listed? Oh, yeah, it was heritage listed. So all of a sudden you've gone from, we've just doing a block drain to all of a sudden, we've prevented sewer from overflowing in one of Sydney's iconic heritage listed harbourfront residential
$1 million
locations.
Homes.
It's the same shit, but it's a completely different spin, right? So I think, and as business owners, this is common. We have blinkers on and we sort of see black and white, when the reality is you got to think outside the box with a lot of these things.
Well said.
Anyway, so just to add, I suppose, to what I've learned over the years in relation to structuring a business that is not dependent on you. And I'd love to hear your feedback on this, John. And I know you talk about this in Built to Sell, where essentially it refers to a digital or a design agency that essentially is trying to be everything to everyone. And as most of you guys know, you end up being nothing to anyone in that situation. So they dial in a certain process that they've got, which is their 5-step logo design process, and they take that to market. And as a result, they start selling that and niching into that. The other part of the book, I suppose, is the conversation around systems, where at the beginning, the owner was everything. He was being there and he was the one who was overseeing, he was quoting the job, he was winning the job, he was overseeing design, he was doing everything, client communications, so on and so forth, sales. And within the book, he learned that if he ever wanted to not do any one of those things, he had to build out processes which enabled and equipped his team members to basically take on that role and responsibility, so he doesn't have to do it. So that's a big part and a big revelation, I think, for a lot of business owners, is letting go and building out processes and equipping team members with the responsibilities so that you no longer have to do it.
Yeah, it's a huge component of building to sell. And one of the things I think most owners kind of, when they hear, oh, you got to have standard operating procedures or SOPs, they kind of roll their eyes and go, yeah, like who's going to read that, right? Like it's going to be obsolete the day we create it. Or I don't have time. I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs think that way. Like, I don't think we get out of bed in the morning and think, oh, I'd like to write a process today. Like that's not how we think. But that is, I think, one of the most important steps is to design sort of checklists and systems and processes that your employees can follow that basically enable them to do it the way you would want it done. Right. And I think one of the, again, it's why we talk about TVR first and systems second, is if you're trying to like systematize your entire business and you're still doing hundreds of different jobs every year, it's going to be a fool's errand. You're never going to be able to systematize a business like that because there's just so many things you do. But if all you do is offer a furnace maintenance program, as an example, as an HVAC company, and every 3 months you go to Mrs. Jones's house and you change her filter out and you check her, the allergen levels in your air, and you write a nice note and you leave, like you can actually systematize that. You can actually write the instructions for a technician to go into Mrs. Jones' house and do all those things. But if you're doing all kinds of HVAC jobs, it's going to be really tough to build the system. So I think the first step is TVR. And then the next step is Productize. And then the final step is Systematise, is to basically write those processes for the one thing that you're going to own, and the place that the hill you're going to die on, that one area of expertise. Systematize that so that it doesn't feel like you've got to spend your entire life becoming a systems expert. Because I don't think anyone listening to this gets their jollies from writing systems. It's just That's just not, I think that we're wired.
It's funny until you say that, but as soon as you see one work and work without you, it's like the most celebrated moment of my week.
Addictive, right?
It's amazing. And you're like, holy shit, this actually works. And then even beyond that, once you start empowering your team members to go and create those processes, because if they're involved in the process, they're far more likely to follow it, right? As opposed to you giving them an instruction or an order. Man, that is just an organism that will just keeps growing. It's a machine, and it's great. And you need to have a process around making sure that there's a structure to the way that you're creating processes. Don't get me wrong. That might sound a little bit weird, but what you don't want is everybody every minute of the day creating processes on the mediocre things. I know Dave Jennings, who's an Australian author here, wrote a book called Systemology, and he basically refers back to what he coined his critical client flow. But essentially what it means is if you flow chart all the steps in a process, there may be a handful of them that will require SOPs. And so as long as people know they're going on this journey, and if they get stuck at like any one point consistently, document that point so they understand when they can refer back to it. Oh, that's right, I've got to do this. I forgot, whatever it might be. They don't have to refer to it all the time, but it's there if they need to,
Yeah,
So
for
there's
sure.
some smart ways to going about that. But essentially at the crux of it all, if you want to remove yourself from doing something in your business, or if you want to free one of your staff members up from doing something that their time is not best spent, you need to have processes in place where you can train people on how to relieve them or relieve yourself from doing that. Now, the question I have for you, John, is when it comes to structuring a business to be sold, and perhaps we could dive into this in the next episode and pull me up if we are, but I want to know about what an acquirer is looking for in that space in terms of processes, because I know some businesses also will have their own processes in place. So, does that mean they essentially, when they acquire a business, they're going to chop all those other processes and you know what I mean? I know you touched on that in the art of selling.
Yeah, let's talk about it in the next episode, because I think we're there now. We should probably dig into processes and how they help or hinder the sale of your company. So let's dig into it.
Well, what a cliffhanger. All right. Well, thank you, listeners. We're going to wrap this one up. So again, we're speaking to John Warrilow from builttosell.com. And guys, he has left some awesome resources over at builttosell.com/shed for the site Shed. So go check them out. Again, there'll be links to it in the show notes. Don't fret if you're behind the wheel right now. You'll be able to get to them when you get back in the office. And also, guys, we'll post links to that when you see this come through. If you're in our Facebook group, post links to that across social, so you'll be able to get to it there as well. John, thanks for your time. Let's come back and speak to the next episode, which is going to be basically preparing that business for sale. We've left a bit of a cliffhanger there, so I think everyone will be pretty keen to tune in for that.
Awesome, Matt. See you on the other side.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.